Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Quote of the day. Most of the time you will fail, but you will also occasionally succeed. Those occasional success make all the hard work and sacrifice worthwhile. Assalamu alaikum. Today the topic of my presentation is about McNemar statistics under kind supervision of Professor Dr. Zaira Afzal. Learning outline of my presentation is today about introduction, difference of McNemar test from chi-square test, calculation, different versions of McNemar test, recent updates, and at the end there is an MCQ session. In the end of this presentation, participants will be able to describe about McNemar test, how we calculate and apply it, different versions of McNemar test, and recent updates. This is table which show the different types of tests which are applied and how they differentiate from each another. There is a categorical data which is in unpaired form or in a paired form. In a paired data, if we set two set to be compared, then we use McNemar chi-square test, and if there is more than two sets to be compared, then we use Cochrane's Q test. And in the unpaired data form, if we compare two groups to be compared, then we use chi-square test or Fisher exact test. And if the group is more than two, then we use a chi-square test. For nominal variables in the form of 2 into 2 table, there are three types of statistical tests that can be used. The first one is Fisher exact test. The precondition for its use are binary data in unpaired sample. The second one is the McNemar test, which require binary data as in Fisher exact, but in the paired sample. And the third one is the chi-square test, requiring a sample size of more than 60 subject with more than 5 counts in each cell. The chi-square test can also useful for a contingency table of more than 2 into 2 table, 3 into 2, 4 into 4, and so on. Let's talk about McNemar statistic. First, we discuss introduction. McNemar test is a statistical test used on a paired nominal data. It is applied to 2 into 2 contingency table with a dichotomous trait with matched pair of a subject to determine whether the row and column marginal frequencies are equal. It is named after the Quinn McNemar, which proposed this test. The McNemar test is used to determine if there are difference on a dichotomous dependent variable between two related groups. It can be considered to be similar to the paired sample t-test, but for a dichotomous rather than a continuous dependent variable. There are basically three assumptions about McNemar test. And the three main assumptions for this test are: you must have one nominal variable with two categories and one independent variable with two connected groups. The two groups in your dependent variable must be mutually exclusive. In other words, participants cannot appear in more than one group. Your sample must be a random sample. The sampling distribution of the McNemar statistic is a chi-square distribution. The McNemar test is always done on data into 2 into 2 table form. The degree of freedom for this start is 1. If this test is done and the critical value for the McNemar statistic, we set 3.84, the critical value, then the null hypothesis is not rejected if our end result is more than 3.84, and the null hypothesis is rejected if the result of McNemar test is less than 3.84. This is how we put the data in. If we apply a McNemar test, this is 2 into 2 table, A plus C, B plus D if we add up these side, and A plus B and C plus D if we add the row total. And this is the formula which are used for the calculating McNemar test, and we use in this formula only a discordant pair, which is B and C. So you can clearly see in the formula. The null hypothesis of marginal homogeneity states that the two marginal probabilities for each outcome are the same. A plus B equals to, and A plus C equals to, PC plus PD are equal, or maybe PB or PD are equal. And if we suppose over null and alternate hypothesis, then we write in the form of this. This is over null hypothesis, in which we can say that the PB is equal to PC, and over alternate hypothesis suggested that both discordant pair are not equal. Because McNemar test is based on the information only in the discordant pair, the calculation of exact p-value is quite simple. If the null hypothesis is true, then it implies that the B and C cell should be equal very informally. These cells are just count of people, so the underlying distribution has to be binomial, where one half of the count should be in each cell. For example, below is the data for 334 women with breast cancer. Screen film mammography detected 136 women and digital mammogram detected 138. But only 84 of these women were detected by both modalities. The data are displayed in this 2 into 2 table. And this their data is written in the 2 into 2 table. We want to see if the proportion of a detected woman differs between the modality. It might be tempting to use a simply chi-square test for this contingency table, but that would be wrong, because the test is built to examine the assumption that the rows and column are independent, which they are clearly not, because the same women are in both groups. So we apply McNemar test in this table. This is how we calculate a McNemar chi-square, which is 3.44, and this is over p-value 0.063 in chi-square p-value, and this is exact McNemar p-value, which is 0.0697. There are different extensions of McNemar test. Edward proposed the following continuity corrected version of the McNemar test to approximate the binomial exact p-value. This is over Edward correction, and this is the formula which is used. And you can see that in this formula, we can also use a discordant pair. Only B and C values are put in the formula. And the other version is exact p-value, and how we calculate it. If either B or C is small, B plus C is less than 25, then a chi-square is not well approximated by the chi-square distribution, because the chi-square distribution is used for the McNemar, for assessing the value of McNemar test. An exact binomial test that can be used if our sample size is less than 25, where B is compared to a binomial distribution, and if with a size parameter. The exact binomial test evaluates the imbalance in the discordant B and C. And if we achieve a two-sided p-value, then the p-value which we get with the help of exact p-value, we multiply it by 2, and then we find the two-sided p-value. This is the formula of exact p-value. How we calculate it? For example, in the subgroup of women less than 50 years old, 72 of these women had breast cancer. Here our B is 17 and C is 7. So we put the value in the formula. N is 24 and this theta is 1 divided by 2. If we put the value, this is over total number, which is 17 plus 7, which is equal to 24. And this is over I, which is 17, and 24, 0.5 raised to power 24, which is over total sample size, and the answer is 0.03196. And if we multiply with 2, then our answer is 0.06, and if we get the two-sided p-value, and in this figure it is show our result is same 0.06 and 0.06. This value is we get from calculation which we done online, and this we calculate manually. The mid P McNemar test is calculated by subtracting half the probability of the observed B from the exact one-sided p-value, then double it to obtain the two-sided mid p-value. Mid p-value is an other version of a McNemar test, and we find with the help of this formula. The original McNemar test was most powerful but often slightly liberal. The mid-P version was almost as powerful as the asymptomatic McNemar test and was not found to exceed the nominal significance level. It should be noted that if the sum of discordant pair B plus C is small, even if the total sample size is large, the statistical power of the McNemar test is low. Thus, in research studies with small sample size and sum of the discordant pair is less than 25, the exact binomial test can be used, and binomial distribution is used for the analysis of result. Alternatively, adverse continuity reaction is another option. Nevertheless, the use of an exact test in studies with few subjects will produce unnecessary large p-value with poor power. Now it's time for the recent updates. This is one of the article in which they discuss about the non-parametric statistical test and their applications. These tests include the same is true for discrete data in that there are certain assumptions that need to be satisfied to identify the correct statistical test to use in comparing the data group. In this paper, the discussion will be focused on 9 commonly used statistical tests. These common tests include t-test, pair t-test, analysis of variance test, Wilcoxon rank sum test, Wilcoxon sign rank test, non-parametric ANOVA, and chi-square, Fisher exact test, and a McNemar test. The condition for the use of these tests will be described and the application therefore will be discussed. Therefore, the purpose of this paper is not to describe the mathematical theories behind different statistical tests, but to introduce the test and their application. This is one of the another article in which they discuss how there is the effective use of McNemar test. What hypothesis does the McNemar test evaluate? When analyzing paired binomial data using a 2x2 contingency table, either the McNemar test or the chi-square test could be applied. The null hypothesis of the chi-square test is that the two categorical variables being tested are independent. In contrast, the null hypothesis of the McNemar test is marginal homogeneity in that the row and column marginal frequencies are equal. This is one of the another article in which the main title is McNemar test revisited comparing sensitivity and specificity of diagnostic examination. The novel examination and reference standard result are usually presented in the form of a 2x2 table, which allows calculation of sensitivity, specificity, and accuracy. It has been recommended that the measure of statistical uncertainty should be reported, such as the 95% confidence interval when evaluating the accuracy diagnostic examination. The McNemar X2 test used to compare discordance of two dichotomous response can be applied for this purpose. Applying the McNemar test to a 2 into 2 table for comparing the accuracy of examination is not recommended since the test is sensitive to the proportion of positive versus negative subject. In this article, we propose the use of McNemar X2 test to compare sensitivities between examination. Now there is an MCQ session. Researcher wants to find out which of two methods of dressing wounds are more effective at preventing infection. 70 rabbits are each given two similar wounds, which are dressed with the two methods. For each rabbit, it is recorded whether each wound has an infection or not. Choose the most appropriate procedure to decide if the method of dressing would has an effect on whether there is infection. Chi-square test for independence, pair t-test, unpaired t-test, linear regression, or a McNemar test.
D.
E is the right answer, McNemar test. Researchers were entrusted in the care of head trauma patient while in hospital. From the hospital record, they recorded information about 400 patients across several hospitals. Some of the information they recorded was whether the patient brain injury was on the left or right side or both, and also whether they develop an infection while in hospital. Choose the most appropriate procedure to decide the location of the brain injury has any effect on whether the patient develop an infection while in hospital. Chi-square test for independence, pair t-test, unpaired t-test, linear regression, or a McNemar test.
E.
A is the right answer, chi-square test for independence. In a particular study, 20 participants were each sent to two rooms for interviews. Before one interview, they were asked that they assume closed pose, such as crossed arms and hunched shoulder. Before the other, they were asked assume open poses, such as hand behind the head or feet on the table. The mean cortisol level was measured for each patient after each interview. Choose the most appropriate procedure to decide if there is a relationship between posture and a mean cortisol level. Chi-square test for independence, pair t-test, unpaired t-test, linear regression, or a McNemar test.
E.
Beta.
Beta, pair t-test, because there are two groups and we find out the mean cortisol level in each patient. In a weight loss program, 50 participants were randomized to two groups. One group were instructed to eat lunch before 2 p.m. and the other group were instructed to have lunch after that time. At the end of the program, the percentage weight loss for each patient was recorded. Choose the most appropriate procedure to decide there is a relationship between the time of days a person eats lunch and their percentage weight loss. Chi-square test for independence, pair t-test, unpaired t-test. The right answer is unpaired t-test, C. McNemar test could be used to compare the number of cigarette smoker among cancer cases and age and sex match healthy control, to examine the change in respiratory system prevalence in a group of asthmatic from winter to summer, to look at the relationship between cigarette smoking and respiratory symptom in a group of asthmatic, to examine the change in PEFR in a group of asthmatic from winter to summer, to compare the number of cigarette smokers among a group of cancer cases and a random sample of the general population. A is the right answer to compare the number of cigarette smokers among cancer cases, age, and sex matched healthy control. There are many versions of McNemar test. Edward proposed the following continuity corrected version of the McNemar test to approximate the binomial exact p-value. Formula used for the calculation T is the right answer. 2 into 2 contingency table for the analysis of chi-square and McNemar test. How was differentiate that which test is applied? Paired nominal data, paired ordinal data, unpaired nominal data, unpaired ordinal data, and a categorical data.
A.
The right answer is A, paired nominal data. 2 into 2 table which is used in multiple statistical tests, and there are two type of pair in this 2 into 2 table. Which type of pair is used in a McNemar test? Concordant pair, discordant pair, unicordant, bicordant, or multicordant?
A.
Beta.
Beta is the right answer, discordant pair. There are multiple sampling distribution used in different statistical tests. Which type of distribution used in McNemar test? Chi-square distribution, Poisson distribution, normal distribution curve, bimodal distribution, unimodal distribution.
Alpha.
A.
A is the right answer, chi-square distribution. There is a little bit calculation in this scenario. A comparison of clinically diagnosed versus autopsy confirmed gastric and peptic ulcer was performed on 750 consecutive disease patients in several large hospitals as shown in the following table. Use this data and apply a McNemar test. Which is the right option? 6.1, 7.1, 7.5, 8.1, or 8.5. Any guess? So this is the solution. 7.1 is the right answer. Only discordant pair are used. 200 minus 150 and raised to power 2 and 200 plus 150. So in the below there is a 350 and in the there is 2500, and when we divide 2500 350, the answer we get is 7.1. This is the key of my MCQs. YouTube link of the channel where we upload these videos, and thank you.